Hello and welcome to the Back Garden Garage, where I am in the middle of restoring my BMW E30. Now, as any E30 owner can tell you, these are extremely common for rotting out. Didn't help that this one was full of water when I got it, so all of that was fighting against me. Now, in terms of the rust removal process itself, obviously if the metal is too far gone, you're going to need to cut it out and then either make a panel to refit back in or buy a new panel if it's available to go in. Both of these are obviously time consuming sort of projects, and they also aren't always fully necessary. This chassis leg here, I can see the surface rust on there, but it's nice, accessible, flat, easy, and I can use a rust remover to treat that area. Rust remover I've been using is Built Hamber, been very impressed with it, works really well, but I'm not talking about that just for this time. What the areas I'm talking about are areas like this rear anti-roll bar bracket, or the mounting point for it, and also the rear diff mount. Now those are corroded in behind the flanges or around the flanges, and going to lead, they're a bit more tricky to get to with the converters and the removers, so it's going to need something a little bit different in technique. There is also an exhaust hanger on the spare wheel well here, which also is going to need some treatment and looking at. Now, with the last time I addressed the exhaust hanger up here, I just completely cut it off the car, then cleaned it up, welded it back on. However, when it comes to the anti-roll bar mountings, the diff mountings, I'm not sure if I trust myself enough to get them back in the same spot that they need to be. It's probably possible, but I think I'm going to err on the sort of side of caution on this one. Leave them in place and deal with the rust as it lies. Now, as for cleaning up the rust on the small items, like that exhaust hanger, and also like the disc I removed from the centre of the boot floor. Side note, does anybody know what these are actually for? I've got my theories, but it'd be interesting to know if anybody knows the true purpose of these. If they do, just let me know in the comments below. As for cleaning up these little sections though, and these little bits and that exhaust hanger, I'm going to run it through my little shot blasting cabinet. Now, if you're going to do shot blasting, even if it is just a little cabinet like this, you are going to need a compressor that can pump out a huge amounts of air. There's no way around it. It will be your limiting factor. I have basically upgraded to the biggest one that I can get, both for physical space, so it's a 150 litre tank, and it's a 3 horsepower motor on the compressor. That is the biggest I can get in the garage. The electrical supply wouldn't be able to feed any bigger motor, and even as it is, it has its own dedicated supply to it because it will chunk through electricity. Mainly the startup when it fires up is the biggest problem, but even still, it is definitely a factor you're going to need to bear in mind, because I kind of overlooked it when I bought this one. It's now cost me a compressor, the wiring and everything else to go with it. So yeah, just one thing to bear in mind. So anyway, I've been rambling. Let's get this bracket cut off of here, run it through the blasting cabinet and see what end result we get. So as I mentioned, I've got no problems in cutting off this exhaust hanger because the location to it isn't critical, unlike the other brackets that are mounting suspension components. So I am just going to make it easier to clean up all of the rust on the bracket and behind it by removing it. Now I'm just going to start in the blasting cabinet with this disc that I removed from the boot floor. And it is just mesmerising to watch, isn't it? So if you like this type of thing, then feel free to subscribe to the channel, give me a like, and join me on the journey as I restore this BMW E30. Now, I am just removing all of the rust that I can see, and any old paintwork I am just taking off with this blaster. Now, I have made a few modifications to this cabinet to make it a bit easier on visibility.
And as you can see, I can see pretty well what I'm doing for the majority of the job. Now that is the disc all cleaned up and rust free, and I can move on to that exhaust bracket. Now this exhaust bracket is a lot tougher, and it does highlight some of the limitations you're going to have with these little blasting cabinets, because it can't remove the undersill or any rubberized texture. So I start off attempting to take it off, but as you can see, there's a lot of that rubber residue left. The air pressure, it just can't cope with that type of thing. So I do go at it with a little screwdriver and scrape off all of this residue that I can get to. And once I do get it removed, I pass it through the blasting cabinet for a second go. And as you can see, this is now all rust free, cleaned up and ready for a bit of primer. As for the primer, I am just going to use a bit of red oxide for this one, because I'm not going to be welding these back onto the car straight away, and I'm just going to give a bit of a mix. Anybody else just use any mixing stick you can find? In this case, it was just a bit of copper tube. Worked absolutely perfectly fine. So yeah, it's just a case of getting the primer slapped on here, and I've got a little rack set up just out of a shot here, but get them hung up and all dried up, ready for when I need to use them again.
Okay, great. So those little bits and pieces that I've removed from the car or cut off, been cleaned up, treated in the blasting cabinet, are primed, they're ready to go back on the car when the time comes. However, cleaning up the areas that I pointed out earlier on, I don't know if you figured this out, but this is not going to quite fit in that blasting cabinet, so I need to tackle it with a new strategy. Okay, so well, technically still the same technique, sandblasting. I'm just using some bigger equipment. Now this is a pressurized pot sandblaster where it will pressurize both the air and the media in the same container and then fire out at a high rate of knots. Now this thing is unmodified. I haven't touched it in any way. I know there are ways to improve it to make it user friendly. You can put ball valves instead of a dead man switch and little things like that. I haven't got around to it yet. It's on the to-do list, but for now, this is what I'm going to use. One thing it does do, though, is make a hell of a mess. So I need to make a container or a shielding around the car so that I can blast in there and keep all of that mess to a minimum.
So I'm just going to use a decorator's plastic with a tape already sort of on there, which means I can sort of seal the tape onto the car or whatever item I've got lying around, and then just unfold the plastic. Now for the underside here, I'm just using a piece of wood, and that will square off the opening, which will make sealing the plastic easier in the long run. At least that's the theory. And then it's just a case of slapping some plastic down and taping it up. Now this section here, I'm using two pieces of plastic and overlapping them. And that should hopefully allow me to have a doorway, sort of a double flap, and I can get in that doorway and it will kind of seal itself for the opening. Well, that's the theory. It kind of worked better in my head. And now you can see here that I also am just sealing the plastic to that wood. So like I said, it just makes it easier to have a square edge to seal to. But yeah, that is me just making up a little shelter.
So that's what I've come up with. Now, I have done this project before, creating a little shelter. Now, last time it was much more structurally sound, shall we say. Although this time I will think it will contain the shot better. Although I've made it a bit small, so it's going to be difficult to get in there and film and get all of that done. So I guess that's my problem to deal with, and you're about to find out what the shot blasting actually looked like.
So this was very much a story of two halves, because it started off okay, but very quickly the nozzle on this blaster started blocking up, and I just spent the majority of the time trying to unclog and get it actually working smoothly. Now, once I did get it working smoothly, it worked absolutely fantastic. I was able to go through big areas at a time and just blast away, having a whale of a time. Now, I was concentrating on the flanges and the edges, but as I was going further and further on, I was thinking, oh, I could do more and more of it. However, it didn't quite go to plan, as these things do. But yeah, I just spent a whale of a time just blasting away, taking away as much rust as I could.
Now, unfortunately, I had to cut the session a bit short. I would have liked, especially once I got it dialed in, to blast almost the entire boot floor. That didn't happen. Something came up and I had to cut it short. So, although I cleaned up the rust from all of these brackets, there was still a little bit of rubberized texture residue. The big pot blaster will take off little bits of that. It's much more powerful than the cabinet, so that's a good thing. But yeah, like I said, time-wise, I ran short. Something came up. I had to stop it where I was. Now, you also may have noticed on that footage an action camera attached to the nozzle. I thought that was going to be a fantastic bit of footage using that. However, got the settings wrong. It is, if you can make anything from this, then fair play to you. But yeah, they're pretty useless, to be honest with you. And it also destroyed the casing of the action camera. So win-win there. So I've learned for next time at least. And also, because I had to cut it short, I had to give it a coat of primer just on the bare steel areas, which has made it more work for myself because I now need to sand that back before I paint it with epoxy. So all around, not the ideal situation. However, the rust has gone. So as for the shelter itself, now this time round it did keep more of the shot contained in that little area. But the problem was, it was only a little area. I made it too small. So every time I had to like unblock the nozzle, or I had to make adjustments to the air outlet, a media outlet for the blaster, it meant I kept knocking against the walls and the sides of the sort of shelter, which lifted up the bottom, which would allow shot to get underneath it. So slightly better than the first time, but still improvements to be made. So we'll see what happens the next time I need to do a bit of blasting. So I've been fighting against the clock a little bit on this one. So to save a bit of time, I have just off camera gone through and sanded down all of that primer that was on there, or the majority of it, scuffed up with a bit of a Scotch-Brite pad. So the base of the car is ready to paint. I have now got it on the, or in front of the diesel heater, so that is just heating up all of the metal of the boot floor. And it's doing a good job of that because it is getting cold in the garage, so not the ideal scenario, but needs musts really. So I'm gonna get all my gear on, get this boot floor sprayed up in some epoxy primer, and then hopefully we'll be done with this section of the car.
So it starts with a bit of mixing, and getting this epoxy all mixed up in its correct ratios. Now you may be able to see the footage isn't the best here. Where I did that shot blasting with this camera, it has damaged the case to it, so the lens unfortunately is a little bit blurry. But I thought I'd try it, and yeah, maybe I need a new case. So I just wiped down this panel again, and then just use some old earplugs to block some of the thread before I can start painting. Now for the painting, I am just starting all the way around the edges, and all of the creases, getting that all coated first before just going over the bigger areas and getting it all in one nice even colour.
So not ideal circumstances, in a bit of a rush, all the things that you don't want when you want to get a bit of paint on the panels, but it is now all one nice even colour. So I am over the moon with that, and mentally it is just another step forward, another tick off the box. So as for the finish itself, it is a little bit patchy in places, but if you aren't familiar with the channel, what I intend to do is once the whole shell is rust free, it will be going over it again with another coat of epoxy just to help that sort of bond and that finish to take shape. Now I still need to just weld on the exhaust bracket, but that is just a case of a couple of welds, so I'll probably do that in the near future. And the bottom edge also hasn't been fully sealed in because I'm likely to need to cut some of that out when I fix that, that inner arch. So there we have it, another section ticked off the list. Now, there wasn't much fabrication in this video, but in the next few, I got a feeling there is going to be plenty of it, because there are some big holes that I need to fill. So if you like what you've seen, give me a like, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more, and I will see you next time.